So we're going to talk more about this Moses guy today. But before we do that, I have just a little bit of business to take care of. A couple weeks ago, I announced that we were having a March Madness bracket challenge. And we did have a winner. And so now I get to embarrass her in front of everybody. Amanda Brokaw gets to come up here. She was the winner. Beat all the other guys, and so she gets this super awesome basketball hoop to put, I don't know, on the bathroom door or something, or I don't know, you can have fun. And Wrigley picked out this super cool fake air horn, and you absolutely need that. So congratulations, Miss Amanda. Big round of applause there. I would also like to point out that while I did get beat by a girl in the bracket challenge, me and my two younger brothers did clean up second, third, and fourth. So take that. It was rigged, probably. I was the one running it. Probably should, well. If it was really rigged, I'd have won. If I'm going to cheat, I'm going to cheat right. Sorry, this is going downhill fast. So no, I'm just kidding. So traveling wasn't always very easy. It was hard, it was dusty, it was hot. And so naturally, when there's a ton of people in this big, long train, the people that fall back towards the end were the women, the children, some of the elderly, the sick, people who just couldn't keep up with the rest of the pack. And these men knew that. And that's why they waited and let everybody pass by. They hid and waited. And it was only when they got to the end of the line that they attacked. And certainly it's a cowardly attack because there's nothing that these people could have done to defend themselves. And word traveled to the front of the line, but honestly, by the time it got there was nothing they could do about it. And even if they'd heard about it fast enough, they probably wouldn't really be able to do much that quickly. And that may seem like a really weird way to start Palm Sunday. And you may wonder what this has to do with Easter. But I'm hoping that as we break down this story today, you'll start to see maybe just a little bit of your own story along the way. So hang with me. We're gonna be looking at the book of Exodus. It's the second book of the Bible, so it's really easy to find. The first one is Genesis, the second one is Exodus. So if you brought a Bible, go ahead and open it up. If you have a digital device, you can find it on your digital device. It's even easier. It looks like Mr. Josh is here. If you would like a Bible and don't have one, go ahead and stick your hand up in the air, and one of these gentlemen will grab you one. I'm actually going to put my hand up in the air because I forgot to bring my Bible up here. So if that didn't spark confidence in anybody, I don't know what will. So we're going to look at the second book of the Bible, Exodus chapter 17. If you absolutely don't want to open up a Bible or a digital device, we'll put it up here on the screens. But while you're finding it, I want to set the stage. You saw a little bit of it in this kids video. This book of Exodus starts out with this little Jewish boy who is brought in. He's taken in by the daughter of the Pharaoh, so he becomes royalty. He's family to them. And yet one day in his anger, he kills a man and he runs away. He goes on the run for 40 years and he becomes a shepherd. Then one day, this burning bush happens and the bush doesn't burn up. And so he goes over, he's like, I got to see what's happening with this bush that doesn't burn up. And God speaks to him through the bush and says that he's the one that's been chosen to lead God's people. And so this Jewish boy spends an entire next chapter of the Bible telling God why he's got the wrong guy. I mean, there's nothing. He tells you, I've killed him. You don't know what I've done. You don't know. He talks about this speech problem. I'm not very good at talking. We saw that in the video. And maybe that's the first place that your story intersects. Maybe God has been trying to speak to you before, and you've put up a little fight and said, I don't know that you know exactly who you're talking to. Maybe you've got the wrong person. And what I'm trying to tell you today is that maybe there's something a little more to that. So if that's ever been your thought in the past, I want you to hold on to that thought as we go through this story. Because God tells Moses, I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what you've done, and in spite of that, I'm going to use you to bring glory to me. And Moses says, okay, how will the people know? And we saw in that video, he gets the coolest magic trick ever. He has this staff. And I don't have an actual shepherd's staff, but he has this staff. And God says, throw it on the ground and it'll become a snake. I was really hoping maybe that would work today. I wasn't real confident, but I was hoping maybe God would. But then I might not touch it after that. But so he throws it down, it becomes a snake. He picks it back up, and it turns back into his staff. And so Moses says, all right, I guess I'm in. And so he puts his trust in God, and he goes to the most powerful man in the land. And you may have heard this story before. He goes to Pharaoh, and he says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, no way, I like slaves. And so Moses takes that staff, and he dips it in the Nile River, and the whole river turns to blood. And then 9 more times, plague, 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 until finally Pharaoh gets fed up with it and he says, get your stuff and get out of here, Moses. I'm tired of this. And then all through the wilderness, Moses leads the Israelite people, out into the wilderness, and all through the wilderness, it's miracle after miracle after miracle. They're getting chased by the Egyptian army at one point. And Moses raises up that staff, and the Red Sea splits, and they walk through on dry ground. And they get to the other side, and Moses lowers that staff back down, and the waters crash in on the Egyptian army and saves the Israelite people. A little bit later, they run out of food and water, and God says, I'll provide the food daily, but Moses, you take that stick and you hit that rock. And Moses goes and he hits the rock, and water comes out of the rock. And God provides for them that way. And yet, even after all this, they're still unhappy. As they wander around, they get to the point where things just couldn't seem like they could get any worse. And that's when the Amalekites choose to attack. And not only do they attack, but they attack the weakest, most defenseless part of the entire nation. And that's where we pick up the story. Exodus chapter 17, verse 8. Verse 8. The Amalekites came and attacked Israel, the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. See, at this time, Moses is about 80 years old. So he can't go out and lead the fight. This is personal. This is, like I said, a cowardly attack. He wants to be on the front lines, but he knows he can't do it anymore. So he goes and he finds himself a leader. He finds this man, maybe between 30 and 40, really good-looking guy, athletic, maybe a little bit of gray in his beard, maybe a Cubs fan. Just trying to help you get a picture of what this guy might look like. He finds this man named Joshua. You might have heard of Joshua before. He's got a whole book of the Bible named after him. If you heard walking around the walls of Jericho and the blowing the trumpets and they come down, that's Joshua. And if you got a book of the Bible named after you, you're a pretty important dude. And this is the first time in the Bible that we come across this man Joshua. And Moses says, Joshua, I know we don't have much. We don't have an army. We don't have a lot of weapons. But I want you to take a sword and you lead them out into battle. You're going to be my man on this one. I can't go. I want you to go. But I tell you what, I got a plan. I'm going to go get the staff. Verse 10, I think is where we left off. So he goes up and he gets the staff. It says, Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. And I read that and I'm thinking, that's all you got, Mo? Like he came in with a plan. At least throw it on the ground, turn it into a snake, it can bite somebody. Like do something. I was hoping for a little bit more. We had all these stories about the amazing thing the staff has done. I was waiting for something like Tim the Enchanter. Anybody know who Tim the Enchanter is? Remember, Monty Python fans? This is Tim the Enchanter. I was hoping for something a little more like this.
You know my name? I do. You seek the Holy Grail.
That is our quest. You know much that is hidden, O Tim.
Quite.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Give me Harry Potter, anything out of this. And instead, it's an 80-year-old man holding up a stick. And it says as long as he held it up, they were winning. And when he dropped it, they were losing. And the first thing I think when I read that is, how do you think he figured that out? He goes up to the top of the hill and, put this down. He goes up to the top of the hill. All right, men. And they start fighting and things go well. Yeah. All right, way to go, boys. Huh? Yeah, here we go. All right. And you ever try to hold something up over your head for a long time? Anybody like recording something at a concert? I don't even think I'd make it 5 minutes. And I've never done this past the age of 80. And here's what I think makes this so hard. You notice nowhere in this story did God tell Moses to take the staff up the hill. All these other miracles before this, God has told him to do something and he's gone and done it. And I'm not saying that this is the wrong thing to do. This has become a symbol of the promise of God to their people. So giving the people a reminder of that promise is not necessarily a bad thing to do, but it's not something God told him to do. So he's on his own. And he gets tired. And in verse 12, we see what happens. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. Until sunset. The dude held his hands up until sunset. And you read that and go, well, but he got some help. But if you go back in the Bible, Aaron is Moses' older brother. Moses is in his 80s. Aaron is his older brother. And Hur is his brother-in-law who married Moses and Aaron's older sister. And back in that culture, chances are that meant he was older than Miriam. And so maybe the help is not quite what we think. And I tried to think how to illustrate this, and I thought maybe we'd have some fun here for a moment. I need a guy that's willing to admit that they're old. Just come on up here. Some guy that's willing to admit that you're old. I don't have a rock, but I have a nice padded seat for our old. Anybody? No? Nobody's going to play along here, huh? You could be old? That's what, go ahead. Come on up here, Bob. I need one more old guy. Come on, old guys. Be proud. Be proud. Have a seat here. Have a seat here. This is what we got. Here you go, Moses. Hold that up above your head. Now, however you would think to hold him, I'll pretend I'm old. I feel old some days. This is what you got. This is Moses' battle plan right here. Any military people in here? Anybody been in the military? How good of a battle plan is this? This is not good. This is the goofiest battle plan I've ever seen in my life. And this went on until sunset. I'm not going to make you guys sit until sunset. Thank you. You guys can go back. Your arm's already tired. I know. It's ridiculous. Thank you guys. Give them a big round of applause. That's the picture. That's what's going on here. As the men are fighting, Down in the valley, these guys are just up on this hill, just trying to keep this symbol of God's word, of God's promise over the battle. And so it goes on in verse 13. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation." So they win the battle because they're under God's promise. As long as he held it up, they were winning. And this is the first time in the Bible that God says, write this down. There's a whole lot of things that have happened before this. A whole lot of miracles, a whole lot of awesome stuff. And this is the first time he looks at Moses and say, write this down. You're going to want to remember this. And so Moses writes it down, and he calls it, "The Lord is my banner." And I think that's so cool, because I don't know if you think about that word banner. My wife loves to watch the Olympics and the opening ceremonies. Any other Olympics fans? And there's always such a big discussion and talk about who's going to carry the flag. Who's the one for the United States that's going to carry that banner? And they all walk in under that banner. Even the one dude from the country that you can't pronounce, that you honestly didn't even know was a country, and you know he ain't winning anything, but you see that look on his face as he comes in holding up that banner. Or the pride in somebody's eyes every time they stand on that podium and that banner gets raised. Even we, as our national anthem plays, call our anthem the Star-Spangled Banner. There is something special about that banner that unites people. Militaries for centuries have fought underneath their banner, and they would rather die than see that banner disgraced. But Israel is only a few months out of slavery. They don't have a flag. They don't have anything to represent their nation, their people. All they got is Moses with a stick. And it's a stick that reminds him that he's just a shepherd. He was royalty at one point. He had everything you could possibly imagine. But because of what he had done, all he has is a stick. It's his shame. And God says, Moses, you give me that shame. You give me that symbol, and let me show you what I can do with it. And he takes that stick and he turns it into a symbol of his promise. This becomes the banner of Israel. The promise that they will walk under, the promise that they will fight under. It's no longer just a stick. It is God's promise to those who have chosen to follow him. And everybody out here has a part to play. Sure, Joshua and the men go out and they actually fight the battle. And Moses could sit on the sideline and say, man, I wish I could be out there. But instead, he finds the one thing he can do. He can take that banner and he can hold it up and remind the men that are fighting what it is they're fighting for. He can remind a nation of the promises of God. And I personally have gotten to see this in action. Maybe not in the way that it happened that long ago, but as I've gone on mission trips with this church, I've seen people who thought they were too old to do things, that couldn't be out doing the physical labor they wanted to be, people with some physical limitations that couldn't be out doing the things they wanted to do. And I've seen it lead to some real internal struggles about their value, about their worth. But then I've also seen those same people head into the kitchen and cook meals, or come around and clean up and find what they could do to lift up the banner of God's glory and say, here's the part I can play, and I'll support the people that are on the battlefield. I'll support the soldiers out there. I'll walk under his banner, and I've seen God glorified because of it. I've seen it in this church. You guys get to see me up here either talking or leading worship. You see our band all the time. You know how we're serving. But not everybody wants to be up here or can be up here. But yet we still need people to mow the yard. We need people that will handle our finances. We need people that will clean the sanctuary. They're people that while they don't have a public ministry that seems like they're out on the front lines, they're people who have found what they can do for God's glory, and they've chosen to follow that banner and play their part. And we need each other in that way, because when one part is missing, it shows. Watch this with me.
Listen, we are better husbands. We are better fathers. We're more servants, more diligence. No excuses. They're useless. You can do this. Follow the banner. It takes discipline to be dead to sin. You can't do it alone. You need your kin, so we keep the pace. Just understand the race. Listen, you don't have to be fast. Just don't run out of gas. No honorable mentions. We leave no leftovers and lick the plate of life clean in thanks to Elohim. No Ponzi schemes, just excellence, just reverence. He is our banner. I encourage you to look around, examine creation. It's beautiful, ain't it? The pictures he painted, a beeline, a finish line. I don't mind if they quote me. They ask me why we ain't hot yet. I tell them I'm cooking mine slowly. This ain't a game. We are standard bearers. We raise the banner for our children, for our neighbors, for our communities. Follow the banner. Everybody, unashamed, lock your arms, plant your feet, look around, they need you. Follow the banner.
Here's the deal. It's not a question of if you're going to follow a banner or if you're going to walk under a banner. The question is, which banner are you under? Because if you haven't made a choice, then you've made a choice. You're following your own banner. You've made your own to walk under. And I don't know how well that's worked out for you, but I know it didn't work out for me. And maybe you're in that spot where you're feeling like the world has gotten the best of you, where things just aren't working. And I want to encourage you this morning to follow the banner. Maybe you've been losing that fight for a long time. This morning you can take that first step to follow the banner. You may look and say, yeah, but you don't know who I am or what I've done. You may carry around shame that you say, yeah, but if people only knew. But God puts these stories in the Bible to remind us that he can take our shame and he can use that for his glory if we're willing to follow his banner. Maybe you've been walking under that banner and you're tired and your arms are getting weary. And he says, let somebody help you. We're all in this together. We're all following the same banner. Get a brother or sister and let them lift you up. Let them hold your arms. Follow the banner together. Our banner may not be a stick anymore. It may not be a shepherd's staff. But Jesus knew when he was getting ready to go to the cross that things were about to change for his disciples. He knew they were going to need something to unite them and to bring them together and to remind them of the banner that they walk under. And so at the end of this week that we call Passion Week, it starts today with Palm Sunday and it goes to Good Friday and then on to Easter. And just before those events, he sat down for one last meal with his disciples. And he took a loaf of bread and he broke it. Bread that had represented the sacrifice that Abraham was willing to make so many years before. If you don't know that story, that's way back in Genesis, way before this Exodus. It's something that all of these Jewish people would have known. And he took that bread, and instead of breaking it to represent Isaac, he said, "This bread is my body, broken for you. And so every time you eat together, remember me. When you share this meal, remember me." He gave them a new banner. And then he took a cup that represented God's promise of a coming Messiah. And he said, "This cup is no longer a promise. The promise has been fulfilled. This cup is my blood. This is my blood poured out for you. And so when you drink together, remember me." And he gave them something that from that point forward would become their banner. It would be the thing that united his people, his chosen ones, that the people that chose to follow him participated in what we call communion. And that's something that we do here at CrossBridge each and every week. We come up, the way we do it here is we go to the outside of our row, and you'll come up and somebody will hand you a piece of bread, and you can dip it in grape juice and then eat it as you go back to your seat. We have some cookies up here for the younger ones. If you haven't had that discussion as a family on whether or not to have them take communion. But here's the thing. Communion is not just a ritual. Just because we do it every week doesn't mean it's just a tradition. This is a choice. This is a choice that you make to say, that's the banner I want to follow. And so this table is open to everybody. Whether you've been a Christian for a long time, whether this is your first time in church, whether it's your first time back in a long time, we don't prevent anybody from coming forward here. So if you're visiting with us, you're welcome to participate in communion. But I want you this morning, as you think about it, to go ahead and take just a moment and to really think about it and process it and decide, is that the banner I'm willing to commit my life to? I sure hope it is. Because God can do with our shame what we couldn't imagine to do with our own glory. Let's pray. Gracious God, I thank you so much for this word, for preserving these stories for us so that we could understand a little bit more about you and how you work. God, I pray that you would speak to each of us individually right now. God, that you know where we are in our life. You know the excuses we've made in the past. You know the arguments that we've given you about why you've got the wrong person. God, I just pray that you would work in each of our hearts individually. Speak to us the way that you want to speak to us right now, and remind us of your love, the depths to which you are willing to go to be in relationship. God, I pray if there is any obstacle to choosing your banner, that you remove it right now. God, let this be a place filled with your love, filled with your peace, and let this be a people that chooses to follow your banner. In Jesus' name, amen. As you guys are getting ready to go, you may be wondering to yourself, you never did get around to saying how this connects to Easter. And you're right. So you're going to have to come back next week to find out. As you head out to pick up your kiddos and be on your way, turn around, shake somebody's hand that's choosing a banner to follow. Have a good Sunday.